Thanks, Kay. I'd like to add my welcome to all the new members and existing members. It's great to be here today. I have the honor and privilege of introducing a man who was thrust into a job that he probably didn't campaign for. He thrust into the job of turning around one of America's largest companies and one of the most iconic brands in the U.S. Dan Akerson took the helm at GM in 2010, leading the largest IPO in history. You'll remember, some of us remember a little bit more discreetly the financial crisis, and following that there was the auto industry crisis where the CEOs of the auto industry went down to Washington, the bailout subsequently, while Dan took on GM in the IPO phase. You know, under his leadership, he's transforming GM to affirm its place as an industry leader in automotive design and technology. I'm sure he's going to talk about that today, driving consistent profitability and gaining global market share. You know, Dan is often described as an aggressive and no-nonsense leader. I would add to that, hugely impatient. And I think anybody that's going to take over GM, I think impatience and a sense of urgency is probably a pretty good trait. One of the stories about Dan goes back, I think, in his early military days. In Germany, he was in a hospital with a gallbladder ailment, and frustrated by the lack of attention that he was getting in the hospital, he personally took the tube out of his arm, went, signed out of the hospital, flew back to the U.S., put himself into a hospital in the U.S. to get service. So that shows a little bit about the guy that is leading the largest auto company in the U.S. Dan is not just the leader of General Motors, but he's got a storied background of leading large and sophisticated companies. Prior to this, he was the head of global buyout at the Carlyle Group in Washington, D.C. And prior to that, he was CEO or president of several telecommunications companies, among them MCI, Nextel, XO Communications, General Instrument. And when we were talking before the lunch today, it turns out that Dan and I both began our careers at AT&T. So he's deeply skilled in telecommunications. More importantly, he's had success in fast-growing companies. He's had success in companies that he needed to transform. And he's got his hands full today with General Motors. Going back a little further, you sense Dan's drive and determination. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, served as a naval officer on a destroyer for 5 years. And finally, he's a big sports fan. So he's in a good place in New England, sports capital of at least New England, if not the world. He is a Minnesota Twins fan. And so on behalf of Red Sox Nation, Dan, we all want to thank you for giving us David Ortiz some 10 years ago. It's worked out well for us. I'd like you to put your hands together and give a warm welcome to General Motors CEO Dan Akerson. Dan?
How'd you find out about the German deal? It's not quite the way it was. It was, I had a serious gallbladder problem. This was before. Now it's not a major operation, but it was then. And they wanted to operate on me. And I'm saying, you got to be kidding me. I'm not being operated in Germany. You have to understand, I had 5 uncles who were in the war. Two of them were literally at D-Day and fought through the Rhine. So I was a little bit, thought maybe they still might have a bad feeling about all that. And the rest of it's probably true. So thank you for the introduction. It's rather colorful, and I'm proud to stand here today before you as the chairman and CEO of General Motors, because this is a great American company that I think, like many venerable companies, lost its way. And this management team is all about transforming this company. And we had our annual meeting last week, and I just out of context, before I launch into my prepared remarks, I made the comment that we'd generated $25 billion in profits since leaving the bankruptcy state, and 2011, actually, we made more money in that year than the company's made in its storied 108-year history. So I will tell you, thank you. We have a long way to go. It took, I don't know how many decades to get us in the situation we were in. It was deplorable, but this team is committed to making a difference, and I would say we're in the early stage of our transformation, so I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. And it's great to be in Boston because actually I lived in Hull, Massachusetts for 1 year. My dad dropped out of college in 1941 and joined the Navy, and 21 years later, at the ripe old age of 40, he retired as a master hard hat diver and a chief warrant officer in the Navy, and he was on the USS Springfield. It was at Boston Naval Shipyard, where it was the first cruiser to be converted to a guided missile cruiser. And my dad and I were great baseball fans. And in 1960, I came to Fenway Park and saw Ted Williams hit 2 home runs in 1 game. And I can't tell you, even to this day, I was so thrilled. And my dad bought me a kind of a pre-signed ball, but I still have that ball from that day. And my dad's been gone for a while. But I'll never forget that day. And the reason I bring that up is, excuse me, there are 2 quotes that I love from Ted Williams that I think will help frame my comments. The first is, baseball gives every American boy the chance to excel, not to be as good as someone else, but to be better than someone else. And I say that because I think we lost the competitive gene for a while at General Motors. And as you all know, if you're not competitive, you're dead. The second one is, no one has come up with a substitute for hard work. And that's relevant for our situation. So it's quotes like these, to me, make a difference because just like in baseball, these quotes apply to business, at least in some respects. In business, you have to bat a lot better than 300 or else you're going to get fired. 300 might get you in the Hall of Fame in baseball, but not in business. At GM today, we aspire to play at the Hall of Fame level. So I want to share some of the things that we're doing to get us from here to there. You may have heard a lot, there's been a reasonable amount written about GM lately, and some of it's actually been okay, good. Our stock is performing well. We're on the cusp of an investment grade rating, and we were just added to both the S&P 100 and 500. It appears that our investor base, our owners, like what we're doing. So what precisely what do they see in GM? They see a company with a fortress balance sheet. That's important. We're in a global, highly cyclical, capital-intensive, long product life cycles, and we fail to recognize that. It takes billions to launch a car or a truck, and in doing so, you have to have a consistent investment cadence. And when we literally, in the 10 years leading up to bankruptcy, because of the on and off, start, stop, because of our complicated balance sheet, heavily leveraged, we would cut programs halfway through and literally squandered billions of dollars that went on our balance sheet as unproductive debt. So, with a fortress balance sheet, we think we can power through these inevitable dips, as we see in Europe today, and come out at the other side of the storm with a strong competitive position. And too often, I think, at General Motors, we siloed one aspect of our business, our capital structure, from our competitive profile, and that's been addressed. So now you see a company that is working hard to be profitable around the world. Believe it or not, in Europe, where all manufacturers, auto manufacturers, are having trouble, we, in the salad days, in the good days, from 99 forward, have not made a profit in Europe. And you have to earn your weighted average cost of capital, or else you're not going to bat 300, much less make it to the Hall of Fame. And so we are pressing hard across the board. And we've stated one of our public objectives is to achieve break even by mid-decade in Europe. That being said, in the two largest markets in the world, China and the United States, we have leading market share and doing better than I think many had any right to expect. But the most important thing in our industry is product. It starts and ends with product, and the lineup at General Motors today literally is the best it's been, I think, in the history of the company. And it starts from top to bottom, from trucks to cars, Chevrolet to Cadillac, and it's good. And to give you an idea, you've all heard of the Detroit Auto Show. It's kind of the premier auto show in the world. It's the North American, where North American Car of the Year has been named for several decades now. Interestingly, Cadillac had been known as the standard of the world, but never in the history of Cadillac has it been named, no Cadillac model has been named Car of the Year. It was this year. The ATS, which we designed for one specific reason, old GM would typically say, we want a small luxury car. So they'd make a car that would address, say, an Audi A4, a C-Class Mercedes, and a BMW 300. We said, no, we want to go against the BMW 300 because we thought that was the best in segment. And believe it or not, from stability and control, the technology we invented and licensed to companies like Ferrari, that's in that car. That car has been built so it's lighter than the BMW 300. That car has a powertrain that will outperform the BMW 300 because we're not going to design a car for a segment of the market. We're going at a point in the market, and it's got to be the best because we're not going to satisfy ourselves with anything less. I don't know if that's impatient or pointed, but that's what we're going for. So we're proud of that, and it's helping us grow Cadillac at a rate that we haven't seen in 40 years. It's the fastest growing brand in America today. A luxury car. Gee, that's novel. But we also have to perform in the other segments of the market. Chevrolet, his growth has been robust. For 10 consecutive quarters, most of I've seen them all, we've had record sales on a global basis. So we've turned that around. 70% of, 10 years ago, roughly 10 years ago, 70% of the Chevrolets we manufactured were made in this country. Today, 60% of them are made internationally, outside the United States, because we can't afford, as we did with Cadillac, to stay, and that was where Cadillac made a strategic error. Back in the 60s and the 70s, think about what a Mercedes or a BMW looked like. I've seen their pictures. They were pretty ugly. They're not now. Our competitors, particularly German and Japanese, in the luxury segment are really tough competitors. And it's also in the lower end of the market, in the Chevrolet part of the market. So it's a testimony to our design, our reliability, our durability, and our quality that we can perform well in the youth-oriented, value-oriented end of the market as well. But just to take a little jump off the highway here, and I want to speak specifically about an area where we need to innovate. And it's important because I work for a company called AT&T and ended up at MCI. And AT&T invented the semiconductor, but they never made them. There was Intel, Texas Instruments. They couldn't take raw research and convert it into commercial gain, competitive advantage. They invented fiber optics. When I was president of MCI, we deployed their own technology against them. When I went to Nextel, they invented cellular technology. They had to buy from Craig McCaw Cellular, to get in what today is AT&T Wireless. They couldn't take from the lab, from the research farm they had. Bell Labs, probably the most valuable raw research, independent research arm in the world, and they just couldn't do it. Well, we have been the leading patent generator in the automotive sector now for several years. One of our lead competitors, when I first took the job, told me that GM, who invented the catalytic converter. Nobody knows that. But how do we convert? I mean, I went to a R&D meeting where we had one guy get 20 patents in 1 year. And of course, the impatient guy shows up and says, well, what have you done for me lately? Are any of those in any of our cars? Where do our customers, where do our investors, where do our owners benefit from raw research? We started GM Ventures. We put $100 million in it, and we go out and we look for startups that are doing something that may or may not be related to automotive. We get the opportunity to kick the tires, walk around it, look for an application, and we're actually marrying it up with our own R&D now and looking for automotive applications. And I will tell you, there's some neat stuff going to come out in the next couple of years that I've seen, and I will tell you will be as important. And I'll give you one example. I don't know if there's any metallurgist here, but you've never been able to weld aluminum. We just patented it. There are 25 pounds of aluminum rivets in the average car. We're going to have to go to more aluminum cars to make the CAFE requirements, the mileage requirements. So we got to lightweight, we got to go Euro, we've got to improve our combustion engines, we've got to get into advanced technologies such as hydrogen and natural gas and electric. But lightweighting is important. There's 25 pounds of rivets in the average car. By welding aluminum together, I will tell you, every one of our competitors wants a license from us. It's a nice place to be. Because if you're in your body shop in a big, I'm talking a 200-acre, 300-acre assembly plant, you have to run 2 assembly lines if you've got to do the rivets. Now we can run 1. So it's more efficient and less capital intensive. This is the kind of innovation we need. So what are we doing to where you'll see it? We actually see that the automobile becoming the next technology platform. And we want to be part of the innovation that takes the analog car into the digital world. And so just to give you an idea, if you could just get people to just trade in their cars as frequently as they do in their phones, we'd be a growth company. We're not going to be able to probably accomplish that task, so we're going to come at it a little bit different way. The technology shift here, how many people use smartphones? Now, that's about the statistics I have here. It's good they dovetail. There's this unquenchable, irresistible need for people to stay connected wherever they are. So consider these 3 statistics. The average U.S. consumer spends 2 hours and 38 minutes per day on smartphones or tablets. That actually tops the 15 hours per week that the average person spends in a car, either as a driver or a passenger. Excuse me, I didn't think I was going to lose my voice today. So if you marry these 2 statistics, you have a megatrend. I love megatrends because we want to get out in front of them. Because we want to, and it's our intention to, harness these statistics to our competitive advantage. We got to look over the horizon more than we were a couple of years ago. And a recent study of J.D. Power found that more than 2/3 of new car buyers, and right now we're working with some real strange people that we wouldn't ordinarily speak to in heretofore generations. I'm talking about MTV and folks like that, to find out what the younger generation is, because we want to get out in front of them. because they're going to be buying the cars. And if you look at Gen X, Gen Y, and whatever these young kids are today, I'll give you an example. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter stands in front of the TV, 3 years old, and this is how she thinks you change the channel. I'm over there, she's doing the old, well, I want to do it, Grandpa. And so you've got a whole different set of potential consumers over the next, not even now, but next 10, 20 years. And they, whereas being connected to the car for you and I was a completely different experience. You were satisfied with OnStar, safety, and if the car stopped, you had somebody to come out and get you. It's going to get a lot more complicated and a lot faster than people think. So, 2/3 of new car buyers already own a smartphone, and 60% rate connectivity as a strong influence in their purchase decision. That's 3 out of every 5 buyers already feel that way. I think it's underestimating, and I think in the next 5 or 10 years it's going to be 100%. Now, maybe my generation won't get into it, but I can tell you my children, my grandchildren will. So what's the best thing to do when there's a parade? Get out in front of it. Try to lead it. When we ask drivers what kind of connectivity they want, hands-free calling, distracted driving, navigation, and automatic crash notification. Automatic crash notification. Well, OnStar already does all that. I don't know how many people, I won't ask you because this is a low market share city. But if you had a GM car, we're trying to change that. That's why I'm here. If you have an accident today, we know about it right away. And we save hundreds of lives every year by doing that. But a lot of people don't know. When you have an OnStar, you got a cell phone embedded in your car. People can call you, and all you got to do is push a button. You don't have to dial anybody. You can just say, I want to call, 212-555-5555. It's there. It's done. So you have what people want today, but not what they'll want tomorrow, because we're continuing to do research in this area. Because when we probe deeper, they want connectivity that'll give them a better quality experience in the car. And when I read the research, and I read everything I can get my hands on, what exactly does that mean? 80%, that's 4 out of 5 consumers, want greater safety. And believe me, we build great cars. I mean, you might have questioned our quality a couple years ago. I did too, but not anymore. And what we build really safe cars, better than our competition. They want a better driving experience. These are kind of too soft for me. And they want better customer care. Translated, people want us to keep them out of accidents and traffic jams, keep their cars from breaking down, and they keep their kids entertained, or at least occupied. Now, lots of companies meet a few of these requirements by doing USB ports and Bluetooth connections. Come on, it's not good enough. At GM, we use Bluetooth too with OnStar, which actually put Bluetooth in all of our cars now, so it puts us ahead. It's not just a given unless you're in the high end of the market. A couple of companies use 3G Wi-Fi on a few models. And again, that only starts to scratch the surface. So imagine that your vehicle can predict when you'll need a new battery and automatically schedule the event at your dealer for you. That technology is about to be into all of our cars, and I would say maybe not this next model year, but certainly the model year after. We are literally able, with our OnStar downlink, to test every one of the things going on in your car, over 400 different aspects of it. Now, it just tells you on an indicator, do I have low tire or low transmission fluid? But we literally can see when your parts are not working as specified, and we can do predictive modeling on a car-specific basis, a VIN-specific basis, or when you're likely to see a failure. That will be in. So what if you wanted to go to Dunkin' Donuts? I know that's big up here. When I was at Carlisle, we bought Dunkin' Donuts. How cool would it be if you were your car automatically contacted the local Dunkin' Donuts a mile or so before you came up on one for a coffee and a cruller. And it's ready for you when you pull up and paid for. Could you embed your credit card into a smart device that's encrypted? Why not? Once you, for those of you that still have children at home, when you get in the car, what if you just transition from a cable channel right to your car? Because you're going to have broadband in the car. And what if your kids want to watch Fast and Furious #6 from the back seat instead of watching the same old? That'll keep them entertained and quiet. Some of this is possible today. Some of it's a couple of years off, but it will require more bandwidth and much faster download speeds. In other words, the big pipe wins. Jay mentioned with General Instrument. We invented high-definition television, won the U.S. standard, because we wanted a bigger pipe. We had to compress digital video signals. It had never been done before. We cracked the code, and we proposed at the FCC when our competition, I mean, we weren't up against a bunch of pygmies. We were up against Sony, Mitsubishi, LG Electronics, little General Instrument wins, and we got acquired at a big premium from Motorola. Same thing at MCI. We deployed fiber, as I mentioned, and went to dense wave division multiplexing way before our competition. Because what you do, you can never know where technology is going to go, but one thing you can be assured of, it's going to take more and more bandwidth. In the auto industry, we're car guys. They don't think about, well, I shouldn't say that. They need to think about what are the buying factors, what are the purchasing factors that are going to lead to success, not in 2013, but in 2023 and beyond. So at GM, we don't know what exactly the future holds. We can't be precise, but I can tell you we should prepare for the biggest opportunity that might come before us. Essentially, we want to turn every car into an internet node. Every car will come out, and we're going to roll this out here in Canada and the United States next year. It will have a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car. It'll also have 4G LTE in every car, and we're going to take it global, but we're first going to strike next year in the U.S. and in Canada. I'll give you another statistic. Capgemini survey reveals that 78, because why are we going to do this internationally? We always think we're the most advanced, and I know a lot of you travel globally. Don't rest on your laurels too long. 78%, roughly 4 out of 5, every Chinese consumer wants connected services, advanced connected services in their car. And even if you step down into the emerging market, the lesser developed world, it only drops off to 64%, 2 out of every 3. So this is something with the younger generation that's going to really drive, I think, sales in our industry. And also we've got to perform on design, engineering, quality, reliability, durability. So it's not a one-dimensional game for us. If done right, I think actually all this technology, because I never really get this question from the Department of Transportation, can actually help with distracted driving. It can be all verbal, and I listened to a report just the other day, excuse me, about how people can't do 2 things at one time. That's true. But they're doing it. I mean, I'll tell you, I used to feel, I told my wife, we've been married 40 years, I don't like going out on New Year's Eve because there are too many drunks on the road. Well, when you're texting, and you see, and it isn't just the kids that are texting as they're driving, that's more distractive than if they've been drinking. So I can't imagine that being able to receive an email or a text or tweet and being able to respond is anything but a big step up from what's going on our roads today. And I think it's important that we play a role in that. We've certainly got a leg up with, excuse me, OnStar. So the reason I mention this is an area that isn't in kind of the wheelhouse of the average OEM today, but it gives you an idea that we could potentially jump ahead. And even what we're doing here is, well, how do we ensure that we stay ahead? Well, there was a tech blogger recently that wrote, it's an app world and the web just lives in it. So what does that mean for General Motors? In order to integrate the smartphone and playbook and we need to entice all of these codeaholics, that's what they call themselves, to write apps for our cars. And that's a little bit different than we've done before. This is the strategy that I think made Apple and Android such dominant players in their space, and that's why we're going to share our remote and in-vehicle application interfaces with third parties through a new website called developer.gm.com. And we have already 2,000 registered users developing apps in a flexible app framework that'll help us keep our technology in our vehicles at a cutting edge for years to come. It's a different GM than it was a couple of years ago. By virtue of having this army of coders working to write 4G optimizing programming for our cars, the GM App Store may someday be as popular as iTunes and Android, if I could only hope. So it opens unlimited opportunities and applications for our customers to be more customer-centric, and we invite partners into the development to help us become more competitive than we are today. So if some of you are scratching your heads and saying, this isn't the GM I remember, you're right, it's not. We think we've got the fundamentals right. We have great-looking vehicles. We have outstanding quality and reliability. And we've got a great fortress balance sheet. All that's fine when you sit in front of your financial analyst. You have to inculcate innovation and ingenuity into a company of this size, this magnitude. For example, the first year I was there, we were a growth company. We jumped revenue in, the second year, from $135 billion to $150 billion. I had to laugh. Facebook was $3 billion. I don't get Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook page, so don't look me up or anything like that. But I thought, geez, we're really making good stuff. And we jumped $15 billion in 1 year. And I don't think we've even realized our full potential. So it's things like this, and the message I wanted to bring to you is that we're just not metal benders. In fact, the IT requirement in our company is prodigious. I mean, it's unbelievably complex. And I'll give you one example. We used to have plants that we would just build one brand, one model. We can't do that anymore. We have to have plants that build multiple brands and multiple models. And I'll give you an idea. The average, could I have a glass of water? The average, thanks, I got one. The average car requires 3,000 spot welds on it when we're in a body shop. And we have to be literally within millimeters. They're 25 millimeters in an inch, so take 2 or 3 millimeters and you see that's some small percentage of an inch. So we have to hit them exactly. And then if you have a Camaro, hard top, soft top, and in one plant we have a crossover called an Equinox. Total different physicality. We have to hit those spots. We have to change the welding gun. One weighs 150 pounds, one weighs 125. When we start the run that morning, we have to know if it's an automatic, if it's a manual transmission, trim level, and we have to know how they're sequenced. And we have to have all that ready. Think about the requirements of having $90 billion of inventory and commodities circling the globe at any one time. We have to know that every plant, every 8-hour shift. And from an IT perspective, we outsourced 90% of our IT back in '85 when we bought EDS. So we're bringing that in too. And that's going to facilitate and make us a better company by virtue of having a core competency in IT, to having a core competency in connected car, to have a core competency in advanced propulsion. Believe it or not, we have 120 odd different hydrogen fuel cell cars in Hawaii. We do that because we can cover hydrogen fuel cell fueling station on the interstate system in Hawaii. That was a joke. We have 22 fueling stations on the island of Hawaii, and we're running this. We've got we've got nearly 100 million miles on these hydrogen fuel cell cars. So this is a company that's changed and is in the process and in the need of additional change over the next, I think, forever, but certainly over the next 5 or 10 years. That's my report on GM. In a sense, you're all shareholders because you pay taxes. We'd like you to sell your shares. For the big investment firms that are here in Boston, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the average taxpayer. The government still owns 13% of the company. With that, I'd like to take any questions. And yes? Yeah.
Other than Hawaii, what's GM's posture on alternate fuels like natural gas? Where do you see the market going?
Yeah. The question, well, I'll repeat the question. Other than alternate fuels, what are we doing in hydrogen fuel cell? What are we doing on compressed natural gas? What are we doing on electric? Well, the Volt, great car. 80% of the people in the United States drive 40 miles or less per day. That car will go 45 miles on a charge. You won't even tell when the combustion engine cuts on and charges the battery. So you're on an electric motor that actually runs turns the axle and whatnot. That car, in terms of utility, you can drive it to California and back, drive it back and back again. When you're running on the engine, you're going to make 45 miles per gallon equivalent. So it's got utility, which we think you can do. But if you're driving around here, I own a Volt. I think we've got 9,000 miles on it. We put 10 gallons of gas on it because I drove to New York and back with it. So we're coming out with electric cars this summer, all electric, but you go 80, 90 miles on them. So they essentially become almost urban cars until there's a big breakthrough in battery technology, which we're working on, and we're really working on that. Compressed gas, natural gas, to give you an idea, on a BTU basis, sells for about a third of what a BTU that's held in gasoline. So we should exercise our natural gas gift that we've been given in this country. We need a national energy policy that says that 1 out of 4, 1 out of 3 of gasoline stations as they're conformed today, or they're built today, in my belief, they should have a natural gas fueling station, which is just a compressor because natural gas is reasonably ubiquitous. We have a engine today that we are selling in trucks. I would like to be able to sell them to you in your cars, and literally it would cost you $1,500 to $2,000 more, but the savings we think would be back in a year. We'll put 2 energy reservoirs in the car called tanks, one a regular gas tank and one a 3,600 PSI natural gas tank. We change the lifters and the valves a bit. All that costs you, let's say in the rough, $1,500 to $2,000, but you'll be able to drive anywhere. And if you end up on I-90 going out to Seattle and you pull into a gas station that doesn't have natural gas, you can just fill up your gas tank. But the majority, just like the Volt, you'll be on driving around here in Boston, say you put 100 miles on a day. You could be on your natural gas. And the same engine will burn either natural gas or liquid gasoline. This is innovation. And we're putting it in our trucks now because we think we need a national energy policy in this country that forces, I think, there have to be market incentives or force the energy industry to marry up with the manufacturing industry. And that's what you're seeing in some of the foreign countries. They're better coordinated on a national basis. We need that, I think, in this country. Yes, sir.
Dan, you talked a lot about where you want to go in innovation, what you want to get out of it, but I'd be interested as a manager, what's different about managing innovation in the auto industry than in the hyper-competitive telecom industry?
Well, I don't think the telecom industry is that competitive anymore. I hope I didn't offend anybody here. But no, but I'm just saying the manufacturers have been destroyed. I mean, Look what happened. Northern Telecom's gone, Lucent's gone, had to merge with Alcatel. There's been radical change in the industry because you have power. You don't have as many telephone companies out there. You've got big ones that control pricing. In the automotive industry, we have to have the same level of innovation as any of your industries do if we want to stay competitive. Because people aren't going to be, I mean, I don't want to say that safety is a commodity, but because of federal oversight, I would say it's pretty close to a commodity. We have to conform with certain requirements. Design, and you can't assume that, I mean, as an engineer, I used to, believe it or not, tune cars, change brakes when I was a kid because my dad did. And I didn't realize this and get this frog in my throat. Design is a differentiator. Interior design is and quality is a differentiator. But you look, and I think having some of the aspects of a connected car could be a differentiator. But advanced propulsion is going to be a differentiator going forward. We're in the first generation of a Volt, and it cost, we just cut prices down to about $26,000, $25,000, and you get a $7,500 tax credit. We can't live on tax credits. But if you have a car that, in my opinion, I've put 10 gallons of gas in 2 years of usage, it's a pretty good bargain. And I don't even notice it on my electric bill because it's a smart car. You can say don't turn it on till midnight when the electric rates go down. So innovation can come in different forms, and it'll come primarily in advanced propulsion alternatives, whether it be compressed natural gas, hydrogen, or electric, or improve. Right now we're working on 9 and 10 speed transmissions, aero, lightweighting, simple thing like, oh, by the way, when I told you we could get aluminum and weld it together, we can also do it with steel, which is no one thought was possible. I mean, that's like red meat, no cholesterol. We thought it was just, I like meat. So to be able to meld, thank you, to be able to weld steel and aluminum is going to give us opportunities because at some point in time, the underpinning of your car, there's going to be steel, just the basic carriage and the rockers and whatnot. So you're going to have both steel, lightweighting, carbon fiber. We're working with all that stuff. And it's metallurgy, it's design, it's a lot. I hope I was all over at that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Diane Durkin with Loyalty Factor. Congratulations on your Cadillac achievement. Now, the Cadillac has held an image over the last number of years. So my question is, what is the targeted demographic for this new high-end car that you've come up with, and what is your branding strategy?
Well, the demographic is the ATS from a demographic, age demographic. We're obviously looking for young, affluent, upwardly mobile people. We're trying to be more attractive to women in particular, but men as well. As you move up the product line, you got an SRX, which competes favorably against the Lexus 300 SUV. We've taken market share there. We want to lightweight it. We want the powertrain to be there. So that's more for young families, upwardly mobile families. I mean, these are premium products, as is most of our BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Lexus. So some of the same demographics. The XTS is a larger car. We came out with initially a 3.6-liter engine. We're coming out with a twin turbo now. This is really a cool engine. Twin turbo, 6-cylinder, 400 horsepower. For those of you that track that kind of stuff, that's pretty hard to do. And that car will make good mileage too. The new Corvette, I'll get just to veer off the Corvette. This has a 455 horsepower engine. We put cylinder deactivation. We put variable valve timing into it. We put in an 8-speed transmission. It gets 26 miles to the gallon. Pretty hard to do that. I mean, that would have been 16 miles per gallon, luckily, many years ago. So the powertrains, the engines themselves, are going to also move us up market. Cadillac, we're not going to stop where we are now. I'm not going to get into it, but I've seen what we're looking at in the 2016, 17, and 18 time period, and we have to widen. We have to widen the product offering, and we've got to make it deeper. And so it's upwardly mobile, different demographics depending on the size of the car and where you are in your life. Yes, ma'am, I pointed you before I missed you.
You have aptly noted that we are all, by virtue of being taxpayers, owners of GM. And I wonder how the experience of GM and the recent bailout informs your view of appropriate investments by government in private companies and even in public sector initiatives.
Well, I'm not going to say anything I haven't said before in public. I am a Colin Powell Republican. I don't drink tea. I think government should help its citizens within a certain envelope and not try to pick winners in a market. But our industry represents about 5% of the GDP in this country. And many of people go around, gee whiz, we're losing the, Americans don't like to really compete on a world economic basis unless we're the Boston Patriots and we're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll probably lose customers in Jacksonville now. We want to win 77-0. Well, I'll tell you what, our industrial base is still 50% bigger than Chinese today. If we would have let this industry go down, you could have written off basically a 3 to 5 state area. And I think government, when Joplin, Missouri was hit with an earthquake, with a tornado, or we lost New Orleans to Katrina, we run down there and we're intense for a couple of weeks. Well, this is much more systemic. We're talking about potentially 1 million people be unemployed, families on welfare. I mean, that doesn't get factored into it. We had a $26 billion pension deficit when I came in. That would have gone on PBGC. The government would have assumed $26 billion, hands down, no questions, had the government not stepped in. We could have failed. I don't think we did, and I don't think we will. I sincerely believe that. So we gave ourselves a chance, and we had to transform the company. There needed to be change, and there has been. And think of the number of children in the Detroit area, in Indiana, Ohio, that couldn't have gone to college. Think about the social repercussions. I do think there's something more than I think the government did the appropriate thing. 2 different presidents, 2 different administrations, 2 different perspectives on the economy and how to run it came to the same conclusion. I mean, it's real easy when you're up in the bleachers, but 2 presidents that are down in the arena made, in my opinion, the right decision. I don't think it's political. I think it's, do we maintain our industrial base? And yes, we do. And I'll tell you what, a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, and a lot of jobs. And don't forget, 70% of the cars we're building are built overseas. We don't take $1, this is, I'm going to be interviewed on this later, I'm sure. We don't take $1 out of what we produce anywhere in the world.
This is recommended.
To fund our China. China somehow has different emotional attachments to it, but we fund, build, do our research and development, brick and mortar in China. We pay the payroll, taxes, and we export. This year it'll probably be close to $2 billion. Comes back here to fund our research for our global operation. We operate we have plants in 106 countries, and everybody comes back to China. China's a great place to do business. We have the largest market share there. It's by a margin, small margin, but we're very competitive. And I do think it was the right thing to do for the American taxpayer. And I think it would have been much more expensive to let it just go down, and there would have been long-term repercussions to our industrial base. So I think when we go we rebuilt New Orleans. We built it below sea level again. We're not building General Motors below sea level again, to use the analogy. Yes, sir.
How has your executive recruitment of your team members impacted
Well, that's a little more dangerous question to answer. It's been difficult, and we've been there. You know, not everybody in the world is motivated by money. I mean, I came to this company for two reasons. On a personal level, selfish reason. I thought it was the most interesting and complex business situation of my business career, and I think by virtue of going to a service academy, you're taught one thing: service to the nation, and it was a great opportunity. I could potentially do more good in my years at General Motors than I did while I was in the Navy, and so I'm proud of what the team has been able to accomplish, and that's how I feel when we want to get someone into the company, and we have been given flexibility. As the top 25. When we did have the best year in the history of General Motors, there were no bonuses for the top 25. And I didn't apologize to anybody because I said, we're here for the greater good. And I mean, I don't want to wave the flag, but there's a certain degree to that. This in my opinion, this company and this industry is too important to have let just slide into the dustbin of history. And, you know, there was that great line in Patton many years ago. And he says, when you're sitting around your fireplace with your child on your knee and they ask you what you did in the Great World War II, you won't have to tell them you did X in Louisiana. And I'm going to be able to tell my grandchildren that I played a small role in making sure that the automotive industry in this country is still here. And believe me, I roll that out when I'm recruiting. 'Cause